RTX 3070 V1 full hash rate times 7, $1,200 each. Half of them brand new and half have been used for a month. Never pay full price for Windows 10 or 11 again. With today's video sponsor SCD Keys, you can get activated for as little as $15 using that coupon BFTYC. Links in description below. Over the last few months, I've been getting some really solid deals on graphics cards like the RTX 3060, RTX 2000 series cards like a 2070 Super recently, and even cards like the RX 6600, which were recently released. And the good thing about this is when you're getting a used deal, you can save quite a lot of money versus the new retail shelf price. However, there are things to look out for when you buy a used graphics card, and the worst case scenario is getting hosed. And that is when the seller says it's in one condition, you buy that product, and then you get it home, put it in your computer, and it doesn't work. The last time I got hosed was years ago, and since then, I've definitely developed a better protocol to picking up used deals, and today we're going to go over some of those ads and share them with you so you don't get hosed too. First off, we are starting with what looks like a crypto miner selling his old graphics cards. Now, I feel in the next few months there's going to be a lot more crypto miners selling their used graphics cards, so I feel like this ad's pretty important to sort of sift through and see if the seller is legit or not. Now, straight away in their ad, I'm going to give them some credit here. They've got the Sapphire Pulse RX 6600. They got two of these, $450 each. This is Aussie dollars, so in US adjusted terms, I'll put that up on the screen for you. This is actually not a bad buy. And in fact, if I was looking for a graphics card, I would put in an offer of 400 Aussie dollars on these two RX 6600s. And I would put in an offer being the key word there. I've actually got to go to Japan in 2 days, so I can't pick up any more tech locally here. But the thing with the RX 6600 was that it wasn't released too long ago. So even if the person was crypto mining on the RX 6600, it's still got a good chunk of life left. But the most important thing with buying a crypto mining card is to make sure that the card hasn't just been put in the system and ran at stock settings. So when crypto miners do their thing, a lot of them will actually undervolt the cards and raise the fan speeds, so the cards aren't being actually stressed all that hard. So when you put them in a gaming PC, they should work fine. And in the case of these RX 6600s, they look like a decent deal. Again, I would put down an offer, but then we move on to the RTX 3060, which was released quite some time ago. And this looks like it's the version 1, which technically they are full hash rate in that the initial batch of RTX 3060s that was released did have this dodgy driver that Nvidia, I feel, purposely released to the market, and that enabled the crypto miners to get full hash rate out of them. But going back to this ad, they say half of them brand new and half of them have been used for only a month when this card was released last year, and that's the initial batch that they had. After that, Nvidia released the version 2, which did put a nerf on the hash rates of the RTX 3060. So I'd be a little bit skeptical about buying these RTX 3060s of this seller. I would ask for some proof of the cards perhaps overclocking the memory whilst running a heavy Unigine Heaven benchmark with the X8 anti-aliasing on. Though the next card they've got here is, again, similar to the RTX 3060. They got the RTX 3070 full hash rates, and they're asking $1,200. But again, you can go and buy an RTX 3070 brand new locally here for $1,000. So as a gamer or a person selling gaming PCs, I wouldn't even bother looking at this RTX 3070 or 3060 listing because I feel they're too expensive. And also the fact that the RTX 3070, the V2 came into effect about 10 months ago. So the 3060s and 3070s that they're selling were released quite a while ago, but they're saying they've only got 1 month's usage when they're full hash rates. So I kind of smell in this ad a miner just selling their graphics cards because the mining profitability is starting to go down and power costs are on the way up. The next ad that we've got up here is an RTX 3080 Ti. They're saying it's used and they're trying to sell it for $1,900 firm, when you can go out and buy a 3080 Ti just straight from the retailer for $1,700. So there seems like there are quite a few graphics cards on the market where the sellers are probably just not aware that the graphics card prices are dropping. So in that case, you can just tell that seller, maybe if you want to get a deal and you're polite enough, you can just say, hey man, I can get this for $1,700 brand new. Would you take $1,500? And so that way you can get yourself a deal and the seller can sort of become aware that, hey, okay, market conditions have changed. Maybe I should sell this graphics card sooner than later. And a perfect example of this is if you guys have seen my used parts hunts recently, I was actually putting in a bid on this exact ad right here. It's the RX 6600 Mech OC. I put an offer of $450 back over a month ago, and the seller rejected it and he said, I want $550. I'm not going any lower, Brian. And then I said to them, well, I'm going to pass on this one. Sorry, it's too expensive. And now they're asking $475. So these sellers do want to sell their graphics cards sooner or later. And so if you're watching some of these ads, you can actually save them in your favorites. And then if you see that the seller is dropping the price, you can come in with your offer again, and perhaps they just might take it, meaning you can get a deal. The next ad that we've got up here is one that I would throw down an offer on for 600 Aussie dollars. This is an RTX 2080 and they're asking 700 for it. They've slashed the price from 850, so they do want to sell. And they're just saying, look, I'm selling this due to an upgrade. They're going to show it working and then they'll unplug it right in front of you. And so they're pretty confident that they've got a 100% working card. And while I'm at it, I would also ask the seller just to install MSI Afterburner and actually just overclock the memory slider, because what I find with RTX 2000 series cards and also RTX 3000 series cards is that you should be getting at least 300 to 400 megahertz overclock on the memory. And if it can't go this high, then I would say that maybe the seller has been mining cryptocurrency and the memory, the VRAM on that graphics card has degraded a little bit. So you do have to be careful, but that is one test if you're picking up a used graphics card that you can do to see if the card has a solid life left in it. Though coming back to this ad, besides the fact that the person doesn't know how to just go into Windows Photo Viewer and just rotate the photo 90 degrees, it does look like it has been taken care of. It's in a gaming PC with all fancy RGB and a water cooler. And generally, I would say people who have the graphics card in this kind of configuration weren't really cryptocurrency mining. But again, back to that test, I'd be looking at that test personally, making sure the memory has a bit of headroom in it, and that way you know you're getting a decent deal. And next up, we've got an RTX 3070 XC3 Ultra. They're saying it's full hash rate. They mentioned the purchase date, which is pretty good. I like the transparency in the ad. But going over some of the photos and looking as closely as possible, we can see that on the fins of the cooler on this card, there's a little bit of rust, surface rust. Now, there's only really two ways this happens, especially with a card like an RTX 3070, which is relatively new. The first being it was in flood water, which we recently did here on the channel. We cleaned that up and that actually worked fine in the end. I'll put the link to that video up here. But then there's also the second way, and that is the card is used heavily. And the only way it's really been used heavily is in a cryptocurrency mining environment. And so that essentially there's just so much air coming through, especially if they live near the water, which they show that they do. Then this card, I believe, was mined quite heavily on. And so now they're selling it. They're trying to get even probably more money than they paid for it originally, plus all their mining profit. But that said, this card being mined on for over a year, I'd be reluctant to buy it. The next up is a card that I, again, would be putting an offer down if I was staying in Australia for a bit longer, and that is a 6700 XT. They're asking 700 Aussie dollars for this. They've slashed it down from 900, so they are keen to sell it. In the ad, they said they've only used it for light gaming, and looking at the photos, the card does look like it's absolutely immaculate. And on top of that, they say no time wasters, low ball offers, or swaps. So you'd probably be able to come in with an offer of 650, maybe even 600, and you'd be able to get a really good deal in Australia here on a 6700 XT. And also on top of that, they supply the original invoice and it's got that 3-year warranty. So this is a pretty solid one in my opinion. The last ad that we'll pull up for you guys is again an RTX 3070 full hash rate. This one, I'd be not even going anywhere near it because in the ad, they say that not only is the price pretty bad in my opinion, 1,300 Aussie dollars, but they say that the power connectors are a little loose. And I don't know about you guys, but if I'm buying a graphics card, I don't want the power connectors on it to be loose, especially on a card that draws as much power as an RTX 3070 does. And I actually checked out an article on Reddit about these loose Gigabyte power connectors, and the person had to RMA it. So if you have to RMA a graphics card, sometimes it can take a long time for you to get your graphics card back. So it's important to either buy from a retailer that has a good exchange policy, or again, check out the card before you buy it and make sure it works really well. And so in this case, I would actually even only be offering the seller half the price of what he's asking, just because he's admitting to the card having some kind of fault on it. And that potentially means that you've got to waste your time doing an RMA in the future. So with those ads aside, there's also some other tips that I can give you guys if you're buying a used graphics card. And the first one is I usually like to go to the seller's house or meet up at a location where I know if they've hosed me down or something goes wrong, I can go and talk to the person again and try and sort something out. So I'm pretty lucky in the sense that here locally where I'm at, I live in a place called Southeast Queensland in Australia. Everyone's generally pretty upfront about what they're selling. They don't want anyone to get scammed, and they of course probably hate getting scammed too. So we've got this pretty good culture here where we are locally, where we meet up at people's houses and we just do exchanges, especially for tech products. Though other parts of the world, people might want to meet you at the gas station, they might want to meet you at a supermarket or at a shopping center. Me personally, I really shy away from that because the last time I did that years ago, that was when someone sold me a dud graphics card. And I actually got hosed out of, at the time, I think it was 120 Aussie dollars. Not only have you lost your money, but you've just wasted all this time going out, meeting the person, going out, checking out the graphics card, and then finding out it's faulty. It's one of the worst feelings ever. So for me personally, especially when it comes to graphics cards, which generally carry a high price tag, I always like to go to that person's residence or where they are, if it's work or something like that, and check out and make sure that the graphics card is working, because that's what I would do if I was selling a graphics card personally, and I want to make sure that people see the card up and running, they know the product works 100%, and they're confident and they can go home and know that they're not getting hosed. Then with that aside, it does look like graphics card prices are coming down to levels where I'd feel comfortable building a gaming PC right now, especially if you held out through 2021. And what I'm seeing locally here is that there are great deals on your marketplaces where you are. Now, people like to buy cards off eBay. I've only bought one new card off eBay, and that's because they had sales. Usually eBay prices are actually going to be a lot higher than what you can get on a local deal. Roughly, I find about 15% higher, because eBay, at least in Australia here, they charge around 10%, 11, 12% fees, and then the seller has to pay shipping on top of that. As opposed to selling it locally, there's not just the less of a hassle for the seller, but they also get to keep all the money that they're selling it for. So in turn, you're gonna get a better deal. Anyhow, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button. Also, let us know in the comments section below, what are you paying for graphics card prices right now? Is your market still a little bit absurd? I know I hear from people over in certain European countries that prices are really high where they are, but basically seeing the trend that's happening in Australia here, the prices of graphics cards went down, then they started coming down in the United States. So I think it's only a matter of time before cards do start dropping in other parts of the world too. And with that aside, we got the question of the day here, which comes from Punching Cones, and they ask, I got a Strix 2080 Super for 650 Aussie dollars. Did I F up? And my answer to that is absolutely not. The Strix models are generally considered the best line of that particular graphics card. So if you got a Strix 2080 Super for 650 AUD, that's around what I would pay max for it here locally. So it's a pretty decent deal. I wouldn't be upset with that. And you've got some good gaming performance on your hands. So I hope that answers that question. And with that aside, if you guys have stayed this far and you're enjoying that tech, yes, content, make sure to hit that sub button, ring that bell to get the content as soon as it drops. And also, if you want to become a member for as little as $1 a month, you can get some behind the scenes access, talking about a little bit of the intricacies that happens in the world of Tech Yes City. Anyhow, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye.